Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. Today, we are going to get into some nitty-gritty stuff, but it's really important nitty-gritty stuff. We're talking about grammar.
Grammar, yes.
You shared some material with me from EnglisPodcast, day 13.
Right, yeah.
And we're going to take a deep dive into it and see if we can kind of smooth out some of the rough edges we might have in our grammar.
Yeah, I think that's really useful because this content actually looks at common mistakes that even advanced English speakers make.
Right.
So it's good for, if you're learning English or even if you've been speaking English for a while, these are some things that it's easy to trip up on.
Yeah, it's about being understood.
Yeah.
And making sure that your message comes across as clearly as possible. And these little things can really make a big difference.
Absolutely.
So let's start off with a classic, your versus your.
Oh, yes. The classic.
Right.
I mean, it's funny because the material starts off with the example of someone saying, "You're beautiful." Like, that's great if you're like owning beauty itself, like beauty is your possession.
Right. It's like you possess the quality of being beautiful.
Yeah, exactly. But the material's right to point out that that's not usually what we mean.
Right.
And the easy fix, of course, is just adding that little apostrophe.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're beautiful. And then it becomes the contraction of you are beautiful.
You are beautiful, exactly. And it gets a really good visual.
Yeah.
I like this one at the cat, holding a sign that says, "You're possum."
Yeah, I love that.
Isn't it cute?
Yeah, it is.
And so when you think of the contraction, think of the "you're possum" cat.
That'll help you remember.
Right. All right, let's move on to a really tough one. This one is the triple threat. There, and there.
My goodness. Yeah, that's a good one.
This is tough.
Well, I think, part of what makes this so difficult is that they all sound the same. Right. We call those homophones, words that sound the same but have different meanings and spellings.
Right.
And the material you shared, it gives this wonderful example of a sentence that actually uses all three incorrectly.
Yes.
And it says, "They're going to their house over there."
Oh, wow.
Like, that's impressive.
Yeah.
To get all three wrong in one sentence.
That takes skill.
But it does highlight how easy it is to mix them up.
It does.
So let's look at how to get them right.
Okay.
So the first one, there, the material suggests linking this to here because they both indicate location.
Here and there.
Exactly. So if you're talking about a place, you're probably going to use there.
Okay. So what about there?
There. That shows possession. And the mnemonic here is to link it to the word heir. An heir, of course, is someone who inherits something.
Yeah.
So you can think of it like their new car. Mm-hmm. The car belongs to them, just like an inheritance would belong to an heir.
So it's about possession.
Okay.
And then finally we have there.
There. And this one, like your, comes down to that apostrophe again.
Apostrophe.
Right. So if you can expand the word to they are, and the sentence still makes sense, then you know you're using the right word.
Okay.
So for example, they're going to the store. You can expand that to they are going to the store, and it still makes sense.
Makes sense. Okay. Great. All right, let's move on. It's versus its. This is another one that can be a little tricky.
Yeah, it's another one of those possession versus contraction situations.
Right.
And the material actually gives an example that I think we've probably all seen. The dog wagged its tail. Right? And it's using the contraction, but what we actually need here is possession.
Right, because you're not saying it is tail. You're saying the tail belongs to the dog.
Exactly. The tail belongs to the dog.
Okay. So what's the rule here?
So the rule is that it's, with the apostrophe, is always the contraction of it is. Like, it's a beautiful day. And it's, without the apostrophe, shows possession.
Okay.
So the cat licked its paws.
Okay. So apostrophe means it's no apostrophe means belonging.
Exactly.
You got it.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do another one. Then and then.
Oh, yes. Another tricky pair.
Yeah.
These relate to time and comparisons.
Yeah.
And I love the example that the material gives for this one. It says, "I like pizza more than you."
More than you.
Yeah, and you read that and you're like, well, wait a minute.
That doesn't sound quite right.
Yeah, because then refers to time.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't say, "I like pizza, then I like you more."
Right. Exactly.
Exactly.
So how do we keep these two straight?
How do we keep them straight?
Well, the material offers a really simple way to think about it. Then is for time. Then is for comparisons.
Okay.
So then you can think of it as a sequence of events like we'll have dinner, then we'll go to a movie. Right. And then is for comparing things like this coffee is stronger than the one I had yesterday.
Right. And some people actually find it helpful to remember that then has an A in it, just like comparison.
Oh, I like that. That's good.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Okay, this is the one that I think is really tough, even for people whose first language is English. Affect and effect.
Oh, yes. This is a classic. This is one that I think a lot of people struggle with.
Yeah, and it highlights it with this example. The weather affects my mood.
Right. And here they're using affects as a verb, but actually the verb we need in this case is affect.
Okay, so how do we untangle this one?
Well, the material gives us a general rule, which is that affect is usually a verb and effect is usually a noun.
Yeah.
So affect is the action of influencing something, and effect is the result of that influence.
That's good. So affect is the action. Effect is the result. I like that.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, though, that affect can sometimes be used as a verb as well.
Right.
But it's less common.
Right.
But just to be aware of that.
Okay, so it's not like a 100% rule, but it's a pretty good guideline to follow.
Yeah, I would say, 99% of the time, this rule will hold true.
Okay, good to know.
And the material gives a great example to illustrate this. It says, rain affects me. So their affects is the verb, right? The rain is acting upon the person.
Right.
And then it says, the effect is sadness.
So that's the result.
That's the result, exactly.
Okay, so affect is the action, effect is the result.
Exactly.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We've looked at your versus your, there.
Oh my God.
It's then, and effect. Phew, that's a lot of grammar.
Yeah. But it's important stuff because, as we said at the beginning, even small grammar mistakes can sometimes affect how people understand what you're trying to say.
They really can. And I think the fact that we've been talking about these common mistakes and how easy it is to get tripped up, even for advanced English speakers, it just makes you realize how much power language really has.
It does.
It does.
And how these small differences can really change the meaning of what we're trying to communicate.
And it just makes me think that maybe there are other things going on with grammar that we don't even realize,
Absolutely.
Like what other subtle things are affecting our communication?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more to explore there.
Yeah. Well, that's a deep dive for another time.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.